Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 7:00 p.m. This is the regular monthly board meeting being held on September 17th, 2020. We have a quorum with all board members present with the exception of Trustee Joy Williams. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. Thank you. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Okay. Let's see here. Due to the large number of public comments tonight, we'll be limiting each speaker's time to 3 minutes. Ms. Vosick, will you please read the public comment participation script?
Yes, ma'am. If you wish to address the board, you must fill out a card and submit before the presiding officer calls the meeting to order. While speakers generally have 5 minutes to address the board, the presiding officer may establish an overall time limit for public comment and adjust the time allotted to each speaker when necessary to accommodate a large number of speakers. However, no speaker shall be given less than 1 minute. While the board values hearing from members of the public, trustees may not respond to comments as they are prohibited by law from discussing or deciding any subject that is not on the board's publicly noticed agenda. Speakers having complaints against individual district employees or trustees may only address the board after filing a complaint form in a manner provided for in applicable board policy, DGBA for employee complaints, FNG for student and parent complaints, and GF for public complaints. The presiding officer or designee shall determine whether a speaker has filed a complaint according to the policy. Any speakers who complain of individual district employees or trustees during public comment will be directed by the presiding officer to stop addressing the board and will refer the speaker to the appropriate complaint policy. As you come forward, please state your name and your address. Our first speaker is Matthew Tucker.
My name is Matthew Tucker, 826 Honeysuckle Vine Drive, Rosenberg. I am no lawyer, just a teacher and a coach, but I'm going to do my best to speak up for what is right for all students and communities who will be affected by this zoning process. I only bring facts. Facts will show option 1 or map 1 is what's best for LCISD and the students of Randall. This is the map that will benefit the district as a whole, not a single neighborhood. Option 1 was created by a non-biased company. They were using different district zoning principles as their only guide and no other agendas. Even after 20 plus maps and months of works, map 1 was still right there on the final day of the committee. The facts show option 1, map 1 creates a school that mirrors the district's ethnic and economic diversity. The low SES and LCISD average is 46%. Randall would be at 45%. Ethnicity mirrors as well, the first school to really match LCISD. A single neighborhood has used low SES and diversity, etc. to justify their map 2 or map 2.2. But those concerns are spin and not based in fact. The reality and the facts are map 2 does more to divide LCISD into perceived rich and poor schools than any map being discussed. Randall's low SES under map 2 jumps a full 10% to 55%, which creates a perception of a poor school, and perception is powerful. Terry's low SES numbers would rise 2% as well, and map 2.2 would remove all middle class growth on Highway 36. Let's focus on enrollment facts. Many have tried to use overcrowding at Lamar as leverage for map 2 support. Actual enrollment at Lamar today is 1,782, 300 less than next year's projection. So let's look at the kids coming in. 6th grade, 481, 7th grade, 452, 8th grade, 476. Those numbers are not going to add up to 2,093. Under option 1, when you take a look at enrollment and into account, all 3 schools will have a population of around 1,800. You can look at the district enrollment and check my numbers. Travel and mileage have been used as justification for map 2, but let's focus on the facts. Under option 1, no student will travel more than 9 minutes, and no student will have to cross more than one highway. Multiple neighborhoods under map 2 will be traveling across 2 or 3 highways to get to Randall, and travel down 1-lane back roads, unsafe for buses. Travel has been used to justify Kendleton to Randall. This is inaccurate. Randall is 2.5 miles further away than Lamar, 3 minutes longer. Why is traveling further and using back roads safer for the students of Kendleton? More facts. Randall was approved and built primarily to reduce overcrowding at George Ranch. Map 2 or 2.2 being pushed very loudly ignores the fact that George Ranch would stay overcrowded. If the Booth Mud or any other piece of large land developed near George Ranch, we'll be right back here again, rezoning all over again. There's no room for growth. Map 1 creates a boundary south of 59 that would not need to be touched for at least 10 years. Do not vote map 2 or 2.2. Map 1 was there on the final day, a map that is best for the district as a whole, created without bias. Please give Randall a fair shot.
Your time's up.
All right.
Thank you.
Laura Ham.
Good evening. My name is Laura Ham, as she just said. I served as one of the attendance boundary committee members, and I'm still in favor of map 2 with 28A to be included. First, I want to thank you all that this process, as frustrating and long and exhaustive as it is, still happens in LCISD. I know that in large, fast-growing districts, this is not the reality for some of the residents there. So I appreciate all of you who sat and listened with us during any or all of the meetings. There were a few distinct groups who came to express their concern at the input meeting. All of these groups came to advocate for their children. All of them came to advocate for their children and themselves as parents. A few people came to the meeting to advocate for the entire district. One of them, a teacher who personally understands the impact of overpopulating our Title I high schools versus our non-designated Title I high schools. The Reserve, Unit 28A, they said they like to remain at Lamar. The Greatwood community is looking to see George Ranch relieved, in part so they do not have to compete as a 6A school. The communities that are zoned to Randall, regardless of which map you choose, had varying reasons behind their concerns, but all of them agreed that they were not wanting an option that very quickly would move them from one overpopulated school to another. The Bombrook community expressed the desire to stay in the Maroon Track to keep their children and their friends together and to avoid the unfavorable traffic pattern that would exist for the next several years. One of the most significant differences within all of these maps was whether Bombrook Plantation students remained in the Maroon Track or moved to the green. No matter where you put 44I and 44P, the balance is shifted due to the number of our enrollment and the ethnic diversity. At the same time, however, the maps that were provided to the ABC committee that did include the Bombrook and the Maroon Track met more of the objectives with the data that was given to us for the rezoning process than any other maps. I sub for the many nurses in this district. One thing that is always very clear to me is that we are one district made up of very different schools. The one thing that unites us all is the staff that put their heart and soul into these children and their day-to-day interactions with them. Of the objectives for rezoning, the one that stands out on the top of the list to me is to always keep doing what is best in the best interest of students. If you look at map 2, from the standpoint of the teachers who advocate for students at the schools, where many of them are on those lists of at-risk for or not graduating, eligible for free lunch, or who come from group homes. All of a sudden, for me, relieving George Ranch from being a 6A school should not be the priority if it means we are overpopulating the schools that need the relief the most. To close, if you look at map 2 from the standpoint as a parent or a student,
Ma'am,
no matter which point,
your time's up.
help not change more than we have changed right now. Thank you.
Jennifer Lane.
Good afternoon. Good evening, school board. Back in June, I got a phone call from a trustee at Fort Bend ISD, and he asked me, he says, have you checked out the numbers on the Health and Human Services website for Fort Bend County? Are you checking out the positivity rates? Did you notice they were different from the Texas Dishes site? So we started looking into that, and we did some records requests, and we got some information from them, and we started to notice the differences in those numbers. What had happened was Fort Bend ISD had a meeting. They decided to go fully online. In the middle of all of that, we got a communication to the governor. Paxton came out with Morath, and they decided to allow school boards to make independent decisions outside of the county on whether they wanted to open schools or not. And luckily, Lamar offered the option to go to school for our students. So the reason why I'm here tonight is I want to thank you for your leadership for Fort Bend County and for Texas. But I'm here tonight because I think it should be fair for all fans to attend outdoor sporting events. This virus is not an outside virus. I think we have ample room at all of the football fields for parents to come and bring their chairs and come watch those events. I don't think it's fair to give one ticket to a kid and for the kid to go home and go, Mom or Dad or whoever. So I'm here advocating on behalf of the parents for all the outdoor sports for now, so that they have an opportunity to go see the kids play. We all need to congregate together as a community. We all need to be outside. It's healthy for us to do that. I've also consulted with medical professionals that feel that masks don't even need to be worn by the football players. So if we can at least go to the games and wear masks, bring our chairs, do some social distancing, it's important for the kids to have their parents there. And I'm saying that because I do have two boys at Reading Junior High playing football, so that's very personal to me, but to a lot of folks. And hopefully we'll have the gyms full for volleyball as well and for basketball soon. So I want you to seriously consider changing direction and challenging UIL for them not to control the decisions of local school boards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal Murphy.
Crystal Murphy, 9522 Wheatfield Lane. I come before you once again as I did on Tuesday and I have done before. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I come here in favor of MAP 2, and here's why. MAP 1 stinks. It only meets one objective, whereas MAP 2 meets 7. There won't be large growth in floodplains south of George Ranch or near the stinky landfill to overpopulate George Ranch. Sports isn't listed in those objectives either, so let's throw out that whole 5A, 6A thing. We're just here to meet the criteria for the students for the educational success for them. MAP 1 also overutilizes Terry, Lamar, and Randall with a large amount of economically disadvantaged students, all while severely underutilizing George Ranch High School with a low amount of economically disadvantaged students, bringing down its populace into the 1700s until 2029. Also, Dr. Rockwell mentioned during the ABC meetings that the 17 bond wasn't exclusively for alleviating just George Ranch High School, but for all the severely overcrowded schools of where it was built. MAP 1 was also voted out very quickly at the last ABC meeting, while MAP 2 was approved 2 times. And MAP 22 stinks also because it rezones over 1,800 students, causes several splinter schools in the elementary levels, and it meets only 2 objectives. We shouldn't even be discussing MAP 20 here tonight because it was erroneously pushed through with no data, where several ABC members said they would have voted for MAP 2 had they had seen all the data side by side. This information is night and day. when you look at map 2 compared to the other maps. It meets the most objectives and is the least impactful on students per your objectives. It is in the best interest of the students that you vote for map 2 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria Kalunga.
Hi, my name is Maria Kalunga, and I live at 8415 Cloverleaf Drive. First off, I'd like to say that I've waited till the very end to speak to the board in regards to the rezoning because I really don't like public speaking, so I apologize. To be honest, I have to admit that the rezone was not on my radar until the ABC Committee public input hearing, and after looking at the numbers for several of the maps that had been presented, the only rezone that I felt is appropriate for our children is going to be map 1 that was provided by the demographers. This map offered the lowest economic disadvantage, the most appropriate SES breakdown that coincides with our district, and finally, the longest time before the overcrowding at the high schools. I have 4 children, and my husband and I have been very fortunate with everything going on not to have any problems with our schedules due to work. And I'm very fortunate for that. However, I do have concerns for other parents who may not be as fortunate as we are. Not only for the next year, but for the many years after that. If any of the other maps are chosen, we are doing a disservice to not only the children in our community, but also the parents who have chosen this district for its exemplary record. I lost faith in the committee because of their last 2 map recommendations. I commend the committee, although, for taking time to volunteer as members. I do believe that they have but I do believe that they have their own interests at heart rather than everyone's. I've done some research and would like to remind the board that when Fulshire High School was built, the board accepted the outside recommendation provided by the demographers, and that really needs to happen again this time around. Also, there's a lot of concern for separating the elementary school-age children. However, I'd like to remind you also, again, that new elementary schools keep on popping up. I was here when Cora Thomas was built, and then I was here again when Arredondo was built. And they keep popping up to accommodate our growing community. The clear choice for Randall for the Randall rezone is going to be map 1. Thank you so much for your time and your dedication to our students.
Thank you.
Mauricio Kalunga.
Hello, my name is Marisol Kalunga, and I live at 8415 Cloverleaf Drive. I moved here about 7 years ago and have attended 3 fine schools, which are Williams Elementary, Cora Thomas Elementary, and now Polly Ryan Middle School. At my first year at Thomas, my family decided to start fostering my now siblings, Lorena Kalunga, Nayeli Kalunga, and Jason Kalunga. Lorena, when she first came with us, went to Bowie for about 3 years because she primarily spoke Spanish and then moved to Thomas. We have all been through a lot together. My siblings have lost their biological parents and found us, and I have went from an only child to a sister, to the oldest sister, having 3 new siblings. My point is, you can gain so much even if you lose a little. Thanks to evolution, we can now text, call, and talk online. Lots of parents are concerned about the fact that their kids will have their elementary friendship broken up. But due to all these new methods of communication, they won't have to worry about that. My point is, don't let, if you're breaking up elementary friendships, impact your vote today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Very good, very good.
Larry Todd.
Good evening. My name is Larry Todd. My address is 1114 Aqua Vista Lane, Rosenberg, Texas. I am thankful for your time tonight, and specifically, I want to thank the board for being in part of this district. I am not from Texas originally. However, I got here as fast as I could. With that, the school district was one of the first things that came to mind for my wife and I. We specifically chose our home located in LCISD to raise our two boys. Rezoning could bring on a range of emotions, and I commend the board for creating a list of specific, measurable objectives to remove emotions from the decision process. There have been a lot of time and analysis put into this process by demographers, committee members, as well as yourselves. While each has played an important role, now the decision to fulfill the promise of a bright future for our students is in your hands. I urge you to vote in favor of MAP 2 as it meets the highest number of methodical, objective criteria and benefits the most planning units with no favoring of one over the next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina Garcia.
I am Christina Garcia, and I live at 203 Denfield Court. I served as an ABC committee member for the Wright-Randall zoning process. I worked very hard to help create a map that hit the most zoning objectives set forth by the district, which is MAP 2 or its modified version 2.2. I have been an advocate for the data and for doing what is right for all LCISD students and our district as a whole. I would like to add that MAP 1 was never a recommended map and was voted against by the committee several times. One committee member requested MAP 1 be considered again at the final meeting. It was again voted down. Additionally, the committee asked the head of transportation about Kendallton. He stated the mileage was negligible and LCISD prefers to keep buses off 59 when possible. Zoning Kendallton to Randall limits their time on 59 and accomplishes that goal. However, I am not here tonight to speak to the data or advantages for MAP 2 as the data speaks for itself. I am here as a parent to Anthony, Christian, Gabby, and Addison. Modified MAP 2 was created because a neighborhood wanted to remain at their current high school. I am asking for the same consideration for Carter Elementary and our neighborhood who was just rezoned 2 years ago. Additionally, I am asking for you to keep all of Carter 100% intact, which allows Carter to remain zoned to its closest geographical secondary campuses. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Jessica Robach.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Robach. I live at 203 Auburn Shores Court. In 2023, the demographers predict that there will be 4,300 economically disadvantaged students split between George Ranch, Randall, Terry, and Lamar high schools. MAP 1 places 36% of those students at Terry, another 36% at Lamar, 17% at Randall, and 11% at George Ranch. How is it fair to place almost 3/4 of the Southern District's economically disadvantaged students at just 2 schools, the schools with the highest populations considered? Without busing, it is not possible to make large-scale changes to the diversity or the number of economically disadvantaged students at all these schools. But we certainly can do better than what MAP 1 provides, and that is why the committee repeatedly voted it down. In their wisdom, your predecessors on the school board have created zoning objectives to guide decision-making regarding zoning. They stated that all 12 of the objectives should be given equal weight when making boundary decisions. Data regarding each map's ability to fulfill each of these objectives has been shared with you through email and through public comment. Your charge tonight is to look at each map and ask how it relates to the objectives across all of the affected schools discussed tonight. And ask, does it balance? Does it balance those objectives? And balance is your North Star. When parents ask you to focus only on bringing George Ranch to 90% utilization for the next decade, ask, does their map balance? When parents ask you to focus solely on the percentage of economically disadvantaged students at Randall, because they are afraid that Randall will have a stigma or a perception and that you'll start getting bad parents out there, ask, does their map balance? And when people ask you to massage the maps so that football programs can have their desired numbers, ask, does their map balance? Ladies and gentlemen of the board, you have all the facts and data you need to determine which map best balances the zoning objectives. Follow the wisdom of your predecessors, and you cannot go wrong. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Stephen Hurst.
Hi, I'm Stephen Hurst. I live at 9418 Gingerstone Court. Thank you again for having us here to offer our input. Again, I'd like to encourage y'all to support MAP 2 as it keeps our kids together, keeps them with the friends they've had since kindergarten, that they participated in activities with all their life. And I just also want to say on MAP 1, I've had the opportunity to speak to several people from Kendleton City leadership this afternoon, and they were not aware that MAP 1 was going to even come back up. So they were a little frustrated with that. And there were several people that wanted to attend tonight, but they had their city meetings tonight. And so those people were unable to attend this meeting tonight. So please take that into consideration if you're going to consider a map that a lot of people didn't know were going to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Kalunga.
So thanks again for your time. I know you're not compensated for this, and but y'all are very important. The vote you have today is very important. There's been a ton of data emailed to you. There's been a ton of data available on the website. There's a ton of data available from the demographers and from parents. If you're not fully informed, I don't know if you're allowed to, but take another week, take whatever it takes to ensure that you are fully informed. Don't go by data that is sent to you. Go by data that y'all paid for. Y'all paid for demographers to send you data, and that's the data you should be using. I want to, as I was listening to other people speak, I wanted to talk about y'all's objectives, and y'all know your objectives. So embrace a neighborhood community. Bringing people from Kendleton to Randall after they've gone to that school for how many years? That's not embracing the community. The pre-K through 5 elementary schools, not having them separated. You've heard it from him that 10% is the actual cutoff. MAP 1 is still above that 10%, and we're building elementary schools all the time. To reflect the ethnic balance in grade 6 through 12, look at MAP 1, the one that demographers showed you. It matches almost exactly LCISD's average, sorry. To locate schools within grades 6 through 12, that's easy. I mean, you're gonna have, y'all build them, design them like that, so that's an easy one. Randall can see growth, and so can George Ranch High School under MAP 1, all right? George Ranch High School, it is gonna be lower, 5A, whatever. I was here at the very first meeting, I said that should not be a deciding factor. I do agree that should not be a deciding factor. However, there can be tons of growth, and Randall and George Ranch will both have that opportunity for growth. And then to provide adequate space for community-based education, again, y'all made an amazing school. If y'all haven't gone and visited, y'all should go visit it. It's big, it's huge, it's awesome, and it's gonna be great. Having George Ranch underutilized for a little bit will allow y'all to fix it up, make it great, so in case you do see that growth, we will have that facility available. Again, I agree, you heard it at the beginning, MAP 22 sucks. Y'all, that should not be a starting point. That should not be something that you even think about. Right now, what y'all need to think about is how MAP 1 has no other objective except, hey, this is the demographers, this is what they recommend, and this is matching our community. Again, MAP 2 is better than the ABC map, so if it's between those two maps, then yes, but you need to take your time and look at all the maps, or at least map 1, map 2, and don't even look at ABC map. All right, I appreciate y'all's time. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's all, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Okay, we need to approve minutes for August 20th, 2020 special meeting and August 20th, 2020 regular board meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, trustee Danziger makes the motion. Do I have a second? Okay, John Welch makes the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Okay, are there any board member reports?
I'm going to do
Ms.
the updates
Danziger?
of the facilities.
Okay, great.
We still aren't being able to meet, but we keep building those buildings, so here we go. For the bond 2014 Tamaron Elementary School, the final payment recommendation is scheduled for the October board meeting. Bond 2017 ALC addition and renovations, Phase 1, the administration renovation is complete. Phase 2, the 1621 and ALC academics, construction is in progress. The Jane Long Historical Gym renovations, construction is in progress and is on schedule for completion in May 2021. The Jane Long Auditorium seating restoration is complete. Transportation fuel tank replacement, new system is operational. Underground tank removal will begin in the next 2 weeks. Terry High School and George Junior High School additions and renovations. Terry football bleachers and student parking lot are complete. George Middle School, 3 GMP? What? GMP 3. Mobilization is in progress. Earthwork on additions will begin this month. Lamar Consolidated High School and Lamar Junior High School additions and renovations. Construction is in progress and on schedule to be complete in August 2021. The multi-campus carpet replacement final payment recommendation is scheduled for the October board meeting. Multi-campus improvements and HVAC controls upgrades, the final payment recommendation is scheduled for October board meeting. Multi-purpose space high school and orchestra middle school additions, Westendorf Orchestra construction is in progress. Dr. Thomas E. Randall High School and Harry Wright Junior High School construction is 77% complete. Project is on schedule for schools to open in August of 2021. Trailer Stadium press box, contractor is finishing final items in preparation for the first varsity game, which I believe is next week. And Fletcher Morgan Junior Elementary School construction is on hold due to permit delays. Any questions?
Any questions? No?
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am? Sir? Sir?
with all the pressure on society to get back to school or not get back to school, I was glad to be able to attend the opening morning of George Ranch High School. It worked out for my personal schedule, allowed me to go. And I had a mask on. I was standing next to Officer Armstrong, I believe his name is. Just seeing the kids walk in the door, it was a very relaxed atmosphere. And it was just good to see after all the stuff that's been going on in society, and all the COVID policies and the fear and everything else out there. So
Same at Foster,
I was
very
glad to
orderly.
have been invited by Principal Heather Patterson, and I was glad to have gone.
Good. Anyone else have anything? No. Do you have a report, Dr. Randall?
The only thing that I would like to report is we're actually in week 4 of opening school. And I can't say enough about how hard our staff has been working to make everything go as smoothly as it has. Our teachers have been putting in lots and lots of hours. Our custodians, I keep saying food service, child nutrition staff, everyone that's involved, our administrators, they have worked extremely hard. And I want to make sure that we recognize the fact that it is working because they are working. And I appreciate that.
Yes, sir, I agree. Okay. At this time, we will establish a consent agenda. The board creates a consent agenda, which are items the board members feel there is no need for further discussion. So please let me know if anyone wants to pull something. Let's see, 7A1.
I'd like to pull.
Okay. A2, 7A2, 3, 4, 5, 7B1, 2, 3, 4.
I'd like to pull 4.
5 we'll pull and we'll read those.
We'll approve it, and we'll go back.
You'll actually vote on them again.
You vote on it, and then we'll approve.
Oh, okay, so we don't need to pull them?
Yes, ma'am.
We just vote on them?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, okay, got that. Let's see, 6.
I'd like to pull 6.
Okay, we'll pull 7,
We'll pull
8, 9, 10, 11. Let's see, 7C1. And then, I guess that's it, right? Okay, so the consent agenda will be 7A 2, 3, 4, 5, B 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, and C1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Hunt makes the motion, and do I have a second? Ms. Kaminsky makes the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Okay, so we will read the resolutions first, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Ms. Danziger, do you want to do Character Counts Week?
Yes. Okay. Whereas National Character Counts Week is celebrated across the U.S. on October 18th through the 24th, 2020, and whereas the well-being of the community, the state, and the nation requires that our young people become involved, caring citizens with good character, and whereas the public good is advanced when young people are taught the importance of good character and the positive effects that good character can have in personal relationships, in school, and the workplace, and whereas Lamar CISD recognizes the need and has taken steps to integrate the values of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship into teaching activities. Therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declare October 18th to the 24th, 2020 as Character Counts Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, adopted this 17th day of September 2020 by the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. And you want to do, this is National Custodial Worker Recognition Day.
Whereas National Custodial Worker Recognition Day is celebrated throughout the United States on October the 2nd, 2020. And whereas this day recognizes the importance of a clean, well-kept learning environment. And whereas custodial staff members are valuable members of the educational team on our campuses. And whereas the assistance of custodial staff members is particularly important in the daily activities and operations of a school district, and whereas they serve our educational community by providing their talent and efforts in supporting students and staff. Therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declare September 28th through October the 2nd, 2020 as Custodial Worker Recognition Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, adopted this 17th day of September 2020 by the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Okay. Whereas the Human Resources Department is instrumental in recruiting, selecting, resourcing, and retaining quality staff in support of providing an excellent education for all students, and whereas Human Resources plays a key role in fostering satisfaction and loyalty among employees by allowing for professional growth and development, and whereas Human Resources monitors and manages current and future workforce trends, organizational culture, legal and legislative trends, and ethical and social responsibility, and whereas Human Resources is an important part of district leadership and is vital to the overall productivity and efficiency of the district's workforce, and whereas it is a valued and respected department that sustains the district's most important asset, its people. Therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declare October 14th, 2020 as Human Resources Day in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, adopted this 17th day of September 2020 by the Board of Trustees. You're up.
Whereas the abuse of drugs, tobacco, and alcohol has reached epidemic stages in our nation, and whereas visible, unified efforts at prevention, education are the best ways to reduce demand for illegal drugs, and whereas October 23rd through the 31st, 2020 has been declared nationwide as Red Ribbon Week, and whereas our community will join with others throughout the nation to demonstrate its commitment to a healthy, drug-free lifestyle by wearing and displaying red ribbons and participating in a drug-free awareness activities during the week-long observance, and whereas the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is committed to a drug-free community and has committed its efforts and resources to drug abuse prevention education. Therefore, the Board of Trustees of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares October 23rd through the 31st, 2020 as Red Ribbon Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, and encourages the district's staff, students, parents, businesses, and community members to support and participate in drug prevention activities.
Whereas Texas Safe Schools Week is held in conjunction with America's Safe Schools Week on October 17th through 23rd, 2020, and whereas schools make substantial contributions to the future of America and to the development of our nation's young people as knowledgeable, responsible, and productive citizens, and whereas excellence in education is dependent on safe, secure, and peaceful school settings, and whereas it is the responsibility of all citizens to enhance the learning experiences of young people by helping to ensure fair and effective discipline, promote good citizenship, and generally make schools safe and secure, and whereas all leaders, especially those in education, law enforcement, government, and business, should eagerly collaborate with each other to focus public attention on school safety and identify, develop, and promote innovative answers to these critical issues. And whereas the observance of Safe Schools Week will substantially promote efforts to provide Lamar CISD schools with positive and safe learning climates, therefore be it resolved that the trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declare October 17th through 23rd, 2020 as Safe Schools Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District.
Whereas School Bus Safety Week is celebrated throughout the United States during the week of October 19th through the 23rd, 2020. And whereas School Bus Safety Week recognizes the importance of transporting students safely to and from school and school activities. And whereas transportation staff members are valuable members of the education team. And whereas the expert assistance of transportation staff members is especially important in the activities and operations of the school district. And whereas those staff members are diligent in safely transporting our students and staff, therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declare October 19th through the 23rd, 2020 as School Bus Safety Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, adopted this 17th day of September 2020 by the Board of Trustees.
Whereas School Lunch Week is celebrated throughout the United States during the week of October 12th through the 16th, 2020, and whereas the National School Lunch Program has served our nation admirably for more than 60 years through advanced practices in nutrition education, and whereas School Lunch Week recognizes the importance of nutritious school lunch program, and whereas child nutrition staff members are a valuable part of our school's educational team, and whereas the assistance of child nutrition staff members is vital in the daily activities and operations of a school district, and whereas they serve our educational community by providing nourishment for students and staff. Therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declare October 12th through the 16th, 2020 as School Lunch Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, adopted this 17th day of September 2020 by the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. That was like a marathon.
I know.
Goodness. Okay, so now we will go back to the items. Let's see. Okay, so 7A1, consider approval to submit a state waiver to the Texas Education Agency. Christie, did you have a question on that?
Oh, we need to make a motion.
Make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
Mr. Hunt makes a second. Now do we have a question?
I just wanted to bring it up again. I know we do this waiver every year.
Oh, I guess I did. We'll wait. I'm
sorry.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I
I'm
just-
sorry.
We're doing okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You know, we have this waiver every year, but during this COVID time, I just believe that we should be encouraging the small class sizes and assigning teachers more students, be it that virtual. I have been told some have as many as 20, 22 kids. They're trying to do virtual, face-to-face, the same situation. And we're giving them kind of a go-ahead that if we have more kids, we're gonna make those rooms bigger or add more to them. Again, COVID, we're actually trying to do the safe distancing. I understand the logistics it creates. You've got your campus budget, you have your space ability, you have your teacher shortage, but at the same time, I think the students and the teachers, their challenges need to be considered in this day and time. We don't know how long COVID's going to be. I myself just don't feel right saying we're going to possibly increase the number of students to a teacher. They don't need to hear that right now. And I did have one question. I wasn't sure. When a teacher has extra students, say 1 or 2 or 3 students, do they get a para or somebody to come and help them?
Generally speaking, no, but there are some instances where if we approve an additional position and the principal does not hire, she'll do some creative things like that. But generally speaking, if it's 1 extra student, no.
They don't. Okay. I will go with whatever the board decides to do, but I just want everybody to know I am concerned about this. I know we have to be innovative in that you have 2 or 3 extra students, and the campus, maybe they don't have the budget to hire the extra teacher, but there's always ways, maybe adding another class, pulling students from say a class had 19, and another class had 22, and you took 3 or 4 of those, and then you added the extra students. You make a smaller class. But right now, during this COVID time, I don't think is the time to say that we're going to approve, or saying it's okay to give the teacher more children in their class. That's my personal
And
opinion.
you're concerned about the in-person students
And the virtual.
and the virtual.
And the virtual. It sounds like it's a little bit easier for virtual, but when you've got 19 virtual students and you have to stay in touch with the families and the teachers and the kids, that's even harder.
Oh, it's a total.
It's even harder than in class. But I know we talked about, well, we have all these plastic dividers. And you go into restaurants and everything and see where all those plastic dividers are and everything, and they're still at 50%. And so I just can't imagine having 19 or 22, more than even that number, in a classroom and having the plastic dividers and still trying to do the safe distancing, especially when you're working with kids.
I would just remind the board that the waiver allows the district to, in instances, because in a number of instances, we may actually have kids enrolled, and it is one student over the number. And most of the time, parents don't want all of the kids disrupted, and so they work with that one student. If we don't have that waiver, we're in violation of the TEA guidelines. And so that's the purpose of the waiver. It gives us the flexibility to be able to make those types of decisions.
And from what I remember from Tuesday, those teachers are already being hired for Adolphus, and everything else is for the virtual. And will everything change again once the parents can decide if they don't want to be virtual? And then how is that going to work coming in, where would maybe a teacher that was virtual not be virtual, or would?
Correct.
So, I mean, we're gonna have to do some number and student juggling no matter what.
Right.
Correct?
And you are correct. We have hired now both of the Adolphus positions that we had, so that actually will address that situation.
Okay.
And again, you're correct in that if the student numbers shift, we may have to shift staff numbers accordingly to best meet the needs of our students.
And if I remember correctly, in the past, we've done this because sometimes campuses didn't want to just hire anybody. They wanted to wait for the people that came along that were qualified. So that's why we've done it in the past. But from what I'm looking at here, it's all virtual.
Correct.
And it's only 2 or 3 kids over, which is a lot, but
And
the
as
next
Dr.
9 weeks, it might not even be that.
Right, as Dr. Randall mentioned, in many instances, the teacher teams get together and say, we really don't want to split our kids and divide them. Let us work with them so that we're not changing teachers at this time of year, et cetera. So we really do work with the campuses one-on-one as each case comes up.
And so this keeps us legal to do that, to work with the campuses. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Let's call for the vote then. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign.
I oppose.
The motion carries. Okay, and then the next one is going to be 7B4. Consider ratification of items approved under delegation of authority during the COVID-19 emergency. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Danziger makes the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Welch makes the second. Is there discussion on this item?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It was brought to my attention that there's a possibility we're having to, or teachers are being asked to ration some of their supplies. On the on the supplies, the cost, does that go to each individual school? Does that go into their budget as to how much they're going to be allowed to spend?
The district provides PPE at all the campuses. There's no cost for those supplies from an individual campus.
So none of them will be charged?
That's correct.
As to how much, if they're using too many, or one school uses more than the other?
We have a process. For example, I'll give the example of students in when they enter a secondary classroom. We have a process where they take a disinfecting wipe. They wipe down their desk, their seating area prior to to them occupying it. And then when they leave the classroom, they're encouraged to put hand sanitizer on their hands as they leave. And then when the next class comes in, we go through that same process. We have worked with multiple approved vendors to receive our supplies. Wipes are probably our biggest challenge, but we're staying ahead of that. It's a logistical challenge, but campuses are not charged for that. And we have a process in place as with their building managers. When they start to run low, they notify us centrally at maintenance and operations, and more cases of those wipes are brought out. So between wipes, hand sanitizer, masks, et cetera, if they need those things, we have a process and they're provided centrally.
So if you start noticing maybe one school is using an extremely larger number than another school, does someone just go out there and check it out?
We can.
I mean, I know we're very new.
Yeah, right.
4 weeks.
We're yes, roughly 4 weeks into the process. If we were to have one of those one-offs, we have a pretty good system of finding out why that would be. But we wouldn't penalize them by not saying you've gone over your allotment and you're not going to get more. Mr. Morgan, would you like to address that as well?
Like you were saying, if we pull from one school or
Mr. Morgan?
I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. Like you were saying, if we pull from one school or another, if one's lower, that hasn't happened right now. We are monitoring it closely. We're doing fine on our supplies. We're trying to stay ahead of the ordering and making sure we get all of that supplies in on time.
I'll use a quick example. We have some students that they're over there and they're pulling 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, and it gets costly.
Yes.
From my experience, we're spending a lot of money on the PPP supplies. And I was curious as to whether the individual schools were actually going to have to pay. And if it's not, then they really should not have that concern to save or talk to the students about being a little bit more careful about how much they're using.
We always want to provide what they need to follow with our restart plan. And hopefully our teachers are monitoring and making sure that the students are complying with that. We want them to make sure they're cleaning their space prior to sitting down. So, but that staff member in the room should be supervising that.
Yeah, we did have that discussion about pulling 1, 2, 3, and so we did kind of take that into account when we're monitoring the.
Yeah, I know that's very, especially for elementary, but I just know that it was very costly, and
Yes.
I didn't want each individual school being charged for that.
No.
And then saying, you know, we can't afford it.
So if there are examples out there where teachers are saying they're rationing, is what you mentioned.
Rationing may not be the right word, it was just that maybe we're using too much, or maybe we don't have to wipe the tables as much.
Well, let's go with that
Sorry.
hypothetical. Would that just be because the supply van hasn't arrived that day yet, or they just?
Our goal is to always be out front, so we're not waiting on supplies. That we keep an attic stock on the campus as well as in the district. So, and that's why it's crucial for the building manager at each campus to be monitoring that. They work with the campus personnel, and when they see that they set a threshold. When they reach that threshold, that triggers the order for a resupply. We don't ever want to be in a position where we run out on a campus.
A better approach, Mr. Welch, is that if someone has a concern, if they would contact maintenance and operations, then they would know that they would have the necessary PPE that they need.
My main thing was the expense. I just wanted to know who's going to be paying for it, and I didn't want the individual schools to have the budget of how much they.
It's really two-pronged. We received a significant amount of initial PPE from the state of Texas to get us started. Those were things like hand sanitizer and other things. Wipes were not provided. We're ordering those as a district. They are expensive, but we're doing a really good job of getting with our vendors and making sure that we always have an adequate supply.
And we, every Tuesday and Thursday, our custodial supervisors, when they go out in the evening time, they check the supplies at each school. So we have a kind of like a double system in place of checking that. And if somebody does run low, they are welcome to call ahead of time in case, you know, something gets missed.
And when just one-offs, for example, masks, we get contacted that a campus needs more, we get them to them that day. So we're pretty responsive. We know that's important.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those words.
Any more questions? Okay, let's call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries. All right, next item is 7B6. Consider approval of superintendent SMART goals for 2020-2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make it.
Mr. Welch makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Hubenek seconds. Is there some discussion?
I have a couple comments and some questions.
Yes, sir.
I was reading through this again last night, and I realized that the objectives are the same as last year, but the goals are different. Is that accurate, Dr. Grant?
That's correct.
So, there's a few that I was wanting an update on from last year. One, we were talking about I think it's the last goal or objective on page 66 of the board book. It's talking about a promotional video for the district to attract new home buyers to the area. It was going to be produced by March of 2020, and of course, that's nobody knows that COVID disrupted everybody's lives. I'm wondering, were we on track? Did that video ever come out?
Yes, that video was published on the district website and on YouTube, and it was viewed several thousand times.
I view as many things as I can, and I try to follow the district on all the social media sites, and I didn't recall that last night when I was going through all this. Anybody else jump in here if you have any questions on the goals?
I have one or two, but I don't know if it's appropriate. On page 63, when we're talking about the career technical education, if I was wanting to make sure, I know we had a discussion about the early childhood associate's degree. When we have this objective, has that program been instituted this year? We talked about it and said it would be.
Yes, ma'am.
It will be included?
Yes, and it would be part of the industry certifications.
Under industry certification?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm always confused about this 5%, 10% from last year's report. Where do we go to find out how did we achieve those goals of an increase in, let's see, what page was I looking at? Retention, that on page 66. The goal would be to 85% retention. And I looked at it and I go, well, what was last year's?
Traditionally, I believe, and I would have to go back up and look at our DIP final update, and I believe it was 80%. Traditionally, when we're looking at SMART goals, you're trying to do what is attainable, and so a lot of times you will see, based upon the different goal, it is going to be between 5 and 10% of any goal. And obviously, there are some that we're going to reach higher than that, but traditionally, when you deal with SMART goals, it is a 5 to 10% advance, or increase, or decrease, if you're looking at different goals.
Which objective was you referencing again?
Page 66.
Which objective?
Focus
I'm
on
sorry,
talent. Focus on talent. Is that it?
The staff experience is the second one. Expand access to differentiated professional development and coaching for all staff. And the SMART goal was to reach an 85% retention for first year teachers in 21-22.
That, and HR would actually provide, that's where we would go for that information, if you're talking about retention of teachers or staff.
When these SMART goals or the objectives are produced, at any time do they ever go back and say, in comparison to the 80% of last year, does it give you any of, are there any programs that give you that extra information?
I can give you an example in the 2021 SMART goals. If you will look at the school link objective, we refer to it in that when we're looking at Naviance and Zello.
Right.
And we say that because the baseline for the parent involvement was last year Naviance and Zello, because we don't have the school links baseline. So we're utilizing that as the baseline. And so we refer to that in that particular SMART goal. Yes, ma'am.
But it's not a common thing to refer back.
Not always, no, no, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? John, did you have anything else?
No, I'm just gonna ask for an information item later in the meeting about, on page 65 at the very top, the objective and the comprehensive review of the master plan principles for the district and budget. Wait for that for later.
That'll be an information item.
I think, I got it in my head and
Okay.
articulate with people, so we'll see how it comes out.
Okay, okay, yes.
Okay, and this is probably common sense, on page 64, when we were at the last objective, facility safety, it remains a priority. But under the goal itself, it says campuses will maintain 100% monthly compliance with the updated pandemic safety drill guidance. And am I to assume that that's including everything, monthly fire drills, intruder?
Right, so there are some updates this year, obviously, with the safety protocols that are in place and the expectations of the Texas School Safety Center. So there's a requirement from the state to do a set number of drills every single year. However, some of those would require students to be perhaps not socially distanced or other things. So there was guidance given this year on some alternatives. And so we all know that if there is an emergency, we want our students and our staff to know what to do. And so this year, some of those look a little bit differently, and guidance was shared from Chief Warren and our school safety department to our campuses. So every single year, the expectation is that the state requirement for safety drills is followed, and we know this year just looks a little bit different.
How will we do a fire drill?
Well, I believe Chief Warren is on his way in.
Is that going to be a problem if we go into the pandemic?
They've done
Safety
fire
drill?
drills, haven't they?
I'm sorry, your question was specifically for the fire drill?
Well, I'm just using it as an
Okay.
example, because if we've got a pandemic safety drill procedure.
Well, it's a pandemic, well, it's a pandemic variance of our normal drill procedures, would be a better way of putting it. For the fire drills, there really isn't much change because that's very similar to a regular class change. The students will still be able to evacuate. They'll go outside. They'll be socially distanced while they're outside. So you won't see a change in the fire drills. What you will see is in some of the other drills, for example, a shelter drill. A shelter requires us to move those students into a designated area that's protected against a severe weather event. And doing that puts them in close contact with each other. And so we don't want to do that. So what we're doing in lieu of that is providing instruction to the students as to where they should go, but not actually moving them. So we will make some variances, but still be able to complete the drill.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we're gonna call for the vote now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Okay, our next item is 7B7, consider approval of Lamar CISD zoning committee recommendations for Randall High School and Wright Junior High School. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Yes, ma'am.
for the zoning,
Yes,
to
ma'am.
approve the zoning committee recommendation that I'm assuming we're going to be discussing.
Yes, ma'am. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
have some discussion? Do we have some discussion?
Well, I'll start off. If anybody watches the video from last month, or maybe they were paying attention, everybody knows what I thought last month. And at that time, it was expressed by some of you on this board that you would like a month to study the figures and the maps. So I'm very curious what you think, because Texas law doesn't allow me to poll my fellow board members about anything outside of a public called meeting. So I can talk to 2 others, but not any more than that. So I don't know what the rest of you all think of the various maps.
I don't mind going.
Go right ahead.
I have kind of a big spiel to say, and I'm going to cut it back a little bit. I do want to say that I did attend almost all the meetings. I think I missed the first 2. I got there to the ones when they were all discussing the 24 different options. And I just want to say right off the bat, thank you to everyone that participated in this procedure. It wasn't easy. Everyone in that room was passionate. Everyone in that room was working hard. I felt like everyone that was there really took their job seriously. But as anything, once you get so many different variations, you start to get very confused, at least I did. So I kept going home and looking and looking and looking, and I'm glad we have kind of down to their recommendation. I was there when at the public hearing for number 22, which got no love. So the next meeting, they overwhelmingly set it aside. So it wasn't even considered at that last meeting. So then it came down to 2 and then the variation of 2. And I was there for the vote. The big vote was 71% wanted to see the reserve stay at Lamar High School. It was kind of overwhelmingly that they felt like, why move it to Terry, you know? And then the other, again, and they had a lot of discussion about sending the Kendleton students to Randall High School. And that was a pretty, I think 65 or 67% was the vote. I have all the votes down here. So when you start looking at this, and I asked Dr. Rockwood some questions, where do we stand with numbers of students that we're impacting? He said if the 28A projected 105 students for the 2020-2021 school year, but in 5 years from now, there could be like 129 students. That's the reserve. So that's how many students we're kind of talking about. I also kind of worried about the amount of students from Bondbrook Plantation. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, there are more than just those 2 neighborhoods, correctly, that are labeled Bondbrook? Is that right? Or is that just, those 2 units are just Bondbrook? Are there any other neighborhoods that are part of, that are going to go to Randall, and these will go?
I have to ask Mike.
Or I don't know. I was driving around there and it was very hard to tell. It looked like it went on forever. So I couldn't tell which were the 2, because some of them you can they're a stone throw from George Branch High School. But then some are very close to where you have to go to Randall. So I couldn't tell.
Are you referencing planning units 44I and 44P?
Yes.
That would all be Bondbrook Plantation.
Okay, but is there any other other in that vicinity that are those are only ones that have the name Bondbrook on it? Is that correct?
That's correct.
I believe so,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Right next door. That's correct.
Okay, but then, so all those other neighborhoods are, right now, are scheduled to go to Randall High School, that, from almost all the maps. The only 2 that are different from the different
I
maps are
believe so.
Bondbrook. Is that, okay. So really and truly, the only difference between a lot of these maps, and I hear the passionate of the 1 and the 2 and the 2.2, is what we're going to do with the reserve, what we're going to do with Bondbrook, and what we're going to do with Kendleton. Those are the 3 major objectives. And yes, they're right. When you start looking at the low SES, Some of it's broken down better than others in some of the schools. I don't think the low SES should be what defines how good a school is. I don't like hearing that. I know it's perception, but it's what goes on in those schools and how well the students work and how well the principal and the teachers. So, I hate putting a stigma on any school because of where their SES breakdown is. That just bothers me. Maybe that's just me. I do look at the numbers projected for the future, and it seems like we overutilize a couple of schools and overutilize a couple of schools very quickly, especially into the recommendation. I mean, Lamar High School by 2025 is over capacity, whereas George Ranch and Terry are not throughout 2029.
Are you looking at map one?
I know that's the recommendation, which was 2020. But if you go to map one, then, of course, Lamar, it's a year earlier, they began, that 2024, they're over capacity. Again, George Ranch and Randall are not overutilized. Terry gets there by 2029. And yes, I'm hoping that our bond passes. I hope we're building a new high school. Those are all hopes. And we hope we're gonna be doing that. And I want another high school, and I know we're gonna be at this process again in a few years. But I don't want to hurt schools now just because of what we're gonna think we're gonna do later. That's my concern. Option two, option two, Lamar would be overcompensated by 2026. Again, George Ranch, not till 2029, and Terry is fine. And Randall is till 2028. And then the 2.2, Lamar in 2025 is starting. Again, Lamar becomes over the capacity. George Ranch doesn't till 2029, Randall 2028, and Terry stays okay. So I think our job tonight is what can we do to make the least amount of movement of students, but make it fair and I kind of do want to listen to a little bit of what the committees did. They didn't go through all those weeks of work for us to not listen. And truthfully, and I know Mr. Welch, you were at that last meeting, and I know Ms. Kaminsky was, I had to leave, and they had what I thought was the final vote. And if the final vote was for the two with the revised, and it won, and I thought, okay, that's it. That's the one they're going to go with. And I got home and find out that they pivoted completely. So I think what I'd like to do, and again, like you said, we don't get to talk to each other. This is it. So I would like to amend the motion and put 2.2 out there to make a motion that we consider it, so that we can have discussion about it tonight. And if not, then we can go back and do another one. But I think for the sake of consideration, I'd like to put that as a motion, that we revise our motion. Amend the motion with 2.2 as the option.
The one that's adding 28A back to Lamar.
Correct. Okay, so.
You have to have a second.
I'm gonna say, I need a second for that. Do we have a second for that? Mr. Welch seconds.
Now you can discuss it.
Now let's have discussion.
Now we can discuss that.
Okay. And I'm gonna.
I'm in agreement. I attended all but two. I attended the first two, and I missed one. And then when I came back, the 22 map came up, and I was like, where did that come from? And initially, map 2 from the onset was the most favorable one. And it affected, like Kay said, the least number of students, and also the schools as far as splitting. And I think overall for the future, and that's what we need to, you know, a lot of parents you're talking about right now, here and now, but we've got to think about the future. I'm more concerned about if this next bond hopefully does pass, that we'll look at a little bit more direction on planning where we're going to put these high schools. I know we rely a lot on the demographics and the reports, but I never understood how we got Lamar and Terry so close together. We have two elementary schools that are literally side by side, Travis and Taylor Wright. I don't want to get into that situation again. And when I'm looking, and I won't be here when that next school probably, but if you don't strategically place the high schools in the area where you want your students to spread to, we have been accommodating the developers as they're building, and so we're finding ourselves in this situation. We're splitting up the elementary schools. And I think it's very crucial, or it's a time that everybody maybe, let's get out of the box and look where strategically that high school the next high school should be placed. And really watch how close I mean, Lamar and Terry, this is putting us into a big bind here for these schools. They're stuck. They were too close together. And that's hindsight.
Well, I think when it was built.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
When it was built, it opened in 1980.
Yeah.
There wasn't all those
No.
other
I feel like our
But at the same time, so they were building it where everybody kind of lived.
I feel like our
And that's what we're doing now.
demographers have been point on.
Yeah, they know
really.
where the people
It's just
are.
we're growing so fast.
Right, and
so
I think
rapidly.
futuristically wise, so we're not going to get into that, all of a sudden, here's Randall and George, they're all very close to each other, and on the south side, there's nothing, that we don't get back into this situation again. And that would be my suggestion to the next group that has to make this decision. That's just my outlook. I looked at both of these, and I think from day one, I made the comment, it was gonna be 2, 5, or 9. And 2 just came out, it's more balanced, it affects less kids, transportation wasn't as much, and the schools were not getting to their capacity as fast. So I would agree with option 2, 28A as being something to really consider as being the most fair.
Anyone else?
So I'll add something to what Mr. Welch said, in that we can not only not talk about it amongst the quorum of the members outside of a public meeting, but also the actual ABC meetings, we can only have 3 of us in those meetings. So I was a fresh set of eyes when I received this big binder and saw what had been happening, and I've been keeping up with it when the reports were put on the LCISD website. But my thought process was basically I started with the committee's recommendation because we get option 1 from the demographer, but there's a reason that we have a community process, and it's because a demographer can very robotically go through and look at statistics and spit out a map, but they don't know necessarily about which roads are under construction and which schools have been broken up most recently. So the community input, and it sounds like maybe we should revisit what that process looks like. And of course, it was a little bit off this time, I think, because of the pandemic and the way that it had to work. But it sounds like maybe we need to revisit what that process looks like moving forward. But I think it's an important thing to get community input. But as soon as I started looking at it, I started to hear from community members that were on the ABC, including somebody that recommended this map that said, we didn't even receive any of the information like the ethnicity SES breakdown, the elementary feeders, the projected amount of students. And those folks that actually supported it in the ABC started to say, I probably wouldn't have supported it if I saw those numbers. So when I saw that, when I saw how it really underutilized some of our schools and overutilized others, that one was out for me. So I looked at zoning option 1. This is the one that was from the demographer. And one thing that I liked about this was it has the lowest amount of economically disadvantaged students going to Randall High School. But you dig a little bit deeper and you look at George Ranch, and within 3, 4, 5 years, it looks like George Ranch and Randall are going to be underutilized. They're going to be under capacity, whereas Lamar and Terry, for all 10 years, over the next 10 years, are going to be overutilized and over capacity. The other thing that concerned me about this one is that although Lamar is really above its functional capacity in 2024, and there's the expectation that there's going to be a new high school that's going to be built in the northern part of the district, if you look at the statistics and the amount of growth that's in the northern part of the district, there's probably going to be enough new students in that part they're just going to have to relieve Foster and Fulshire. So my fear is that you're going to build a new school and they're still going to be overcapacity schools at Lamar, Foster, and Fulshire. So I looked at map 2, and I didn't understand the purpose necessarily of, I think that when you, 28A, I think that when you move from an existing school and you move to a new school with new amenities and brand new culture and brand new teachers, that there's some solace that you get in that. You know, I'm going to a new school, but to move from an existing school where you've been to have to move to the school that's basically down the street in the same city that's also an older school just doesn't make sense to me. So I ultimately ended up looking at map 2.2, which added 28A back to Lamar, and although I certainly understand all the perspectives, and I could tell you that I looked at these maps for hours upon hours, like I'm sure everybody else here did, until my eyes crossed, and looked at the planning units and the numbers for the planning units. I looked at the elementary feeders and how we're keeping elementary feeders together. I looked at traffic patterns and where construction is and bridges that are going to be redone, and this one seemed to be the one that was on the right track because Terry is not going to be overutilized. Lamar is still going to have more students, but it's not quite as bad as option 1, where I think that if there's a new school that's in the northern part of the district, that it would be able to more easily relieve it. And then George Ranch is basically going to start to decrease until the middle part of this next decade. It's going to be pretty much near where its capacity is, but it's not going to be over its functional capacity for basically the next 9 years. So that was my thought process as somebody that was a complete outsider and didn't see the actual ABC process. The one thing that I did want to, for my colleagues that did see the ABC, on option 2.2, Terry, towards the middle part of the decade, like 2025, 2024, starts to really fall below its capacity. You're at 1714, 1776. And Randall, around that time, is starting to pick up steam and is going to be above its capacity. So I looked at some of the numbers, and Unit 43A, which is currently attending Terry, has about 148 students right now. And if that was moved back to Terry from where it is in map 2.2 at Randall, it would relieve some of the numbers at Randall in the middle part of the decade. It would add some additional students back to Terry, and they attend Terry now, but back from map 2.2, which would mean that they would be more in line with what their capacity is, so we'd be properly utilizing the campuses. And it would have the effect of that planning unit, the economically disadvantaged percentage of students is 66.8. So it would actually have the effect of reducing the percentage of economically disadvantaged students at, I believe, both Terry and Randall High School. So I didn't know if that was a discussion at all in the
43A.
43A.
43A, if I can understand my maps right, this is where Highway 36 and 59 come together behind Lowe's. Right there, that whole area.
Yeah, all the way to Pleak.
You're
little
throwing
triangle.
out on the table to keep that area at Terry High School, where it is currently at.
Even though it's closer to Randall?
Instead of moving it to Randall, which map 2 modified does, is that what you're saying?
Well, when I ran the numbers, it was slightly closer to Randall, but they're basically equidistant between Randall and Terry High School. But yes, what I was trying to get information on is if there was any discussion in the ABC about 43A potentially staying at Terry, which would increase their numbers to get them closer to what their actual capacity is, considering under map 2.2, in 2023, they're gonna be at 1,684 students, and then you've got other schools that have 600 more students than that. Randall High School is going to start to gain more and more students, so by the time it's 2028, they're gonna be 500 above their capacity, whereas Terry, the entire decade, isn't going to reach its functional capacity or surpass it.
Well, option 1 has them staying at Terry, if I'm reading it correctly. If you go back to option 1, in that 43A right there.
Correct.
Am I correct? So,
I think so, yeah.
so then 2 took,
I think I'd have it memorized by now.
Alex, to answer your question, as far as the ABC, and how was just
Yes,
a fly
it
on the
does.
wall listening, I do not remember anybody talking about option 2.2 with 43, what is it, 43A staying at Terry. It could have happened. This stuff gets busy and very quick, so.
To your question, Ms. Danziger, yes, and the original demographer's option 1, 43A, would remain at Terry High School.
Difference is Kendleton.
because see, Kendleton was staying at Lamar.
Yeah.
In that one. So what they did was they took Kendleton to, and that little bit to go to. Although,
So you don't have anything down 43A being discussed?
Well, I think when you look at the demographer's option 1,
Well,
That-
41A. 41A is different also. In option 1, 41A is included with Terry, and option 2 modified. 41A is with Randall.
right. And I'm looking at the recommended one, and it was staying at Randall. So the only one that had it going to staying at Terry was the original option 1 of the demographer. If I'm correct on all the ones that we have right now tonight that we're kind of looking at.
So close.
So, say again how many kids that would be in,
I think one of the answers to your question, was it discussed? I think it was discussed because it was moved from option 1, for example, to some of the other options.
but I never heard any reason behind it in all the meetings I met, was it?
But it looks like they had 41 attached with it. 43A and 41A were in option 1 were together, and they both moved. That one that went to option 2, both of those went to Randall. where you're separating it?
What was difficult at those meetings were, because of the virtual, groups were in separate rooms. So you did not know exactly what all of their discussions were. And then they were brought in
Smaller
together.
breakout groups.
Yeah, the breakout groups, you
But then
didn't hear.
but then the next meeting, they had a spokesperson that spoke why they changed what they did. But
Yeah.
all we ever heard talk about was Kendleton, the Reserve, and Bondbrook. They never really went to, but
The 43A, that particular area, those elementary, that's Meyer Elementary?
43A is
40
Meyer and
43A
41A
is
should be
Meyer.
Culver.
And so part of the,
And right now, Meyer was 81% going to Randall, 19% going to Terry, under 2.
yes. And so part of the reason that I was curious about moving that back was that it would make Meyer more of a desirable split. It would be closer to 50-50 than 1981. But, like I said about the demographer, where, they kind of come in and they look at numbers and I don't want to necessarily, if there was a discussion in
there might have been a
ABC, or
reason,
like if
yeah.
y'all have received feedback from folks in those communities, I want to take that into consideration as well.
how many students did you say that impacted?
There's 148 students in 43A, high school students.
I think to everyone's point, and when you go back and you look at these different options, the small groups are really sort of intended to replicate a tabletop exercise. So if we traditionally did the secondary zoning process in here, we would have groups at tables, 6, 7 individuals, and they would have a conversation, and then there would be a share out. And so ultimately what is shared out amongst the full group would occur at the next meeting. But to some of the conversation points, the demographer originally had 43A that was zoned to Terry High School, and the committee moved it based on its discussion. And when you look at option 22, that was the initial recommendation that went to public input, and the committee had that at Randall High School. And so while there wasn't a whole lot of specific discussion around the rationale in those 20-plus maps, it seems like the committee overall replicated maps that kept that planning unit going to Randall High School.
So you're saying once it was moved, it would never move back in any of the other, at least the main topic points that were discussed?
Looking at these options, which
Yeah.
were near the end of the committee discussion, it appears that for the most part, the committee had 43A remaining at Randall High School.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate reflection of the committee's opinion. In the future, these meetings need to be recorded and broadcast live or within 24 hours on the district website. That's something that we're going to talk about at some point, because I think that would be important. Just like the bond committee was done by Zoom, but it was put on the website for everybody to view at some point. This is, this affects so many different people's lives. I think that would be wise.
If we were considering moving 43A, do we have also then the consideration, or allowed to be considering Meyer being broken down to, that 6238 was showing up a lot for other schools. Now, I'm not sure for what reasons. Would we as a board have that option?
Are you saying, does the board have the ability to adjust the planning units or create a new map? Yes.
So I think what you're asking is, what happens if we decided to move that back? What would the numbers, because then what are we looking at as far as?
Right, that would be my only non-requested feedback, is that
we wouldn't know
if
what
you
we
were
were
looking at
looking at.
creating a new map legitimately,
We don't have a
I think some of the comments that have been made about the committee process was, they did a similar process at the very end of their discussions. And when asked if they would like to come back and see maps, 55% of the committee said no. But I think we've heard over and over again, based upon the public comment, that if you're going to make an adjustment to a map, it would be good to see what that map looks like. I think all of the maps the board has before it are publicly online for anyone to review. Everybody was able to see the numbers, the economic disadvantage percentages, and those things. So the board certainly has the option to make any adjustments. But I think that would be one caveat to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a little.
I wouldn't feel comfortable
Yeah,
doing that without a
I wouldn't feel
demographer.
comfortable doing it without having the numbers in front of us. Although I understand the point about
Yeah.
relieving Lamar.
Yeah, I
balance out
understand
Perry
that.
a little bit when we get to the mid-2020s, but.
But the other point is too, even though their numbers are low, they are the highest high school with, right now, or will be with the highest low SES. So it kind of helps when you have a lower number so that you can work more effectively with those students than bringing more students in. And I don't know if it changes, if we were to move those students back, I don't know if it changes their SES status.
So right now, it's 81%, am I correct? Terry?
And the one we're looking at, is it, if we.
78%, we're currently discussing option 2 with
Yeah,
28A
but what
back
is
to
it
Lamar.
as of this year, is what I think she's asking.
Yeah, that would require some analysis.
Okay, but right now, the one we're looking at 2.2 or 2 with 28A, it would be at 78%.
Okay, I guess I'm looking at, on page 82, it's saying option 2 plus 28A. That's the right one.
Mhm.
Terry's at 81%.
No, that's
Did I-
Hispanic. You look at the bottom.
Oh,
Try
I'm sorry,
looking it
sorry,
up.
sorry. Okay, it's too late. Numbers.
Okay.
They're still the highest.
Correct, but you have to look across the bottom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I agree with Alex, sort of.
That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, I didn't see the 43A thing coming at all. I think it was worth at least the discussion. Although, playing devil's advocate here and talking reliefs to schools, assuming, I think we're assuming the bond is gonna pass, and that will offer some relief to Lamar. By chance it doesn't, you're talking about our oldest school in the district having probably the most students. What is the current enrollment at Lamar? I tried looking it up. I didn't know it off the top of my head. I tried pulling it up on the site real quick. That's my only concern. That I think Alex's point was valid for sure. And adjusting some of that head count and trying to keep the schools at capacity without anyone going over. But at the same time, we're still in this whole time span on our pages here from 2021 to 2029. It leaves Lamar over capacity for half that time.
Lamar
that's
has 1784 right now.
Currently?
That's a what if though, Joe, that we're not gonna be able to make a decision on right now. I mean, that
Well,
vote's
no,
not-
I agree.
so-
I agree. And,
We need a crystal ball.
Right, and all these head counts are that way. I mean, that's assuming the developers come in like they've said, they're going to and develop these certain areas, and these head counts are gonna come as. So the current head count being what it is, the current enrollment being what it is, and, as far as our projected resident, counts, I mean, it's $300 students higher on our projection than what our current enrollment is at Lamar. So hoping that we're not exaggerating the numbers, but we're being overly cautious with our projected numbers, assuming the worst, so to speak. But I agree with pretty much everything you said. That's why I was looking to you to see what you were gonna say, because you and I were in the same kind of situation. There was only so many people that could attend the
Me too,
committee
yeah.
meetings.
I was
So, you know,
that.
everything that I received
Yeah.
was after everything was said and done. I'd heard from a few of y'all and the feedback that, you know, y'all gave. So I kind of went in it blind on my own, with my own point of view, looking at all the maps. And I kind of naturally gravitated towards the 2 modified myself. But my only concern was that we were still leaving Lamar with the highest enrollment. And you know, hopefully the bond will pass. But if it doesn't, then, you know, again, we still got probably one of our oldest school in district, probably one of the highest enrollments, so.
I have a question about the assumption when we do these bonds that the goal to say a high school, we are not saying that the school is designated to alleviate a certain area. Am I correct on that? And that's one of the clarities is, because I read in the last bond, and then, I don't know if it was somewhere in here, that the expectancy was it was going to alleviate certain schools. We're not doing that.
I think the one thing that we've always tried to say in Lamar CISD is that we have our demographic report every year in February, and we get updated numbers every single year. I want to say one year, it was 2014, we had 21 master plan communities appear that weren't planned or in public knowledge the year prior. And so we use the demographic report as a planning tool to make sure that we understand the growth that's coming. But ultimately, whether it's an elementary school or a secondary school, we place it in the area of need. And so I think more than likely, when you look more than 1 year out, you can see where that's going to be, as has been referenced. And looking at the demographic report, there will likely be a need for another high school further north, certainly north of 5969 in the coming years, but the actual location has not been identified at this time.
I'd like to mention that we all got inundated today with tons of form letters, and I'd just like to encourage the public to use your own words. If you want to say the same thing, that's great. Please use your own words if you're going to email, but some of them kept saying the same thing over and over and over again, but I had 1 or 2 individuals that said the same thing in a different way, and they provided me a link to some of the conversations from the ABC in 2017. It's still on the district website. And while it was not promised at that time, it was implied in the answer from the district administration in 2017 that the new school would be to relieve George Ranch. So for the folks in Greatwood who have emailed all afternoon, I heard you and I acknowledge that point. And I wasn't paying attention to LCISD back then, but I think that was implied when a lot of the citizens voted for the 2017 bond.
So there's a lot of discussion with the previous bond committee for Fulshear High School. And there was a very similar process, similar to this attendance boundary committee. And ultimately, that committee decided that they felt more comfortable having the least amount of disruption to the district. And they just made that adjustment in the northern point of the district where they cut off that section where Fulshear currently is from Foster High School. It was very clear that by making that decision that George Ranch High School would be over capacity, that George Ranch High School would become a 6A high school. Those conversations occurred at that time prior to the 2017 bond. So it was very clear that the attendance boundary committee understood the impact of its decision. And we always certainly want to make our decisions that have the least amount of impact, but the process prior to that was a little bit more centralized, and whenever you have multiple tracks involved, it certainly gets a little bit more difficult.
And I believe, and I was part of that, we were kind of saying we would help alleviate that part of the district, and it was not just George Ranch, it was Terry too, that we could see the numbers going up with all, so the South School was going to help alleviate those 2 schools.
Yeah, well, map 2 modified, which is what we're discussing right now, it does bring relief to George Ranch. It does not bring it down to the build capacity of 2,000, but it does bring it down slowly. Next year it's 2,500 from the current 2,800. And then every year after that, it goes a little bit lower, so it would alleviate some of that overcrowding.
They're look to me, if 2,000 students is, we don't say overcapacity till,
2,400.
right. So, but it's like 100 students over capacity, 130. You know, it does go down. No, does it go down lower than capacity? No. But they also,
But you're also, are we creating, in 2025, are we creating overcapacity for Lamar and in Randall? Lamar seems like it is continuously going up. There's no relief in sight for that school.
I think the one.
And then it looks like Randall is gonna catch up with them pretty quick.
Yeah, I think what we're reviewing right now are just fast growth issues. I mean, we talk about it all the time, and I think we kind of get censored to it a little bit where, you know, we are the number 5 fastest growing school district in Texas. And there's a reason when you look at our demographic report, we are more than likely projected to need another secondary complex beyond the 7th one. So when we are looking 10 years out, the expectation is that we would do this process again and perhaps again during that time frame. And those are the challenges and the things that occur in a fast-growing system. So in my opinion, if you're looking at the demographic report, you're looking at these projections, if you get 7 years of overutilization at a high school campus, you're doing pretty good.
and actually the next 4 or 5 years, for most of them, it's okay. Right?
If you look at the growth is going to occur exponentially. We will eventually be adding 2,500 plus kids a year. And that's out in the future. And gosh, the individuals that were on the initial bond issue for George Ranch High School, for example, who would have thought at that time that we would be opening up another high school south of 59 as quickly as we did. That is going to exist in Lamar CISD. I think our challenge is being able to take the numbers that you currently have and make the best decision that you can with those numbers. Because when you start, I guarantee you, we keep traveling south on 59, one of these days it's going to look different as well. So.
Yeah. Okay. So if we just leave, if we wanted to change 43A, we'd have to go through the map system and
We'd have to have the
everything, and
demographer come
yeah,
back.
and then would be a time thing.
Yes, so why don't we call for the vote now, unless anyone
Calling
is.
for the vote on.
We're going to, what are we going to do here, Dr. Brown? Please help me.
You're actually voting on the amendment.
We're going to vote on the amendment.
That's right. And the amendment is, and to be honest with you.
2.2, 2 modified.
Right.
2.2.
Option 2, that adds 28A to Lamar.
Correct.
Back to Lamar.
2.2, and Ms. Danziger made the motion and Mr. Welch seconded it. So I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. No?
Nope.
That's it. Now you vote
Okay.
on the amended motion.
We're not doing that. Wait, okay. So now,
Now, we really vote on
Now what
that
do I
being
do?
the recommendation.
That's right.
now,
Now the recommendation is.
now the recommendation is, what do I do? I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
so confused.
Just, all in favor of the amended motion?
All in favor of the amended motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion
Now you're in
carries.
business.
I am so, that throws me every time. I can't do that.
And
Okay.
again, I want to thank everyone who worked on this.
Thank
and
you.
know that we took this very seriously.
Yes.
Very seriously, between the bond in the last couple of months and this, I am mentally shocked. I understand that. I have studied this 6 ways to Sunday.
So that, yes.
They never did the information.
That completes our action items. Do we have any questions on any of the information items?
Mr. Welch, you said you had something?
John?
Question
No,
on,
he-
no. Does
he
anyone
was
have
asking
any,
something.
He wants to
information?
add something at the end of the meeting.
No information items, right?
Did you have one?
I have one for that current, number 5, the COVID return to school update. the flu shots, are those available, or will they be available to all the teachers and the faculty administrators this year?
We are currently working with the health department to provide that service to our staff.
To the staff?
Yes.
Can the custodians and that also, if they pay, or if their insurance?
All employees, all Lamar CISD employees.
Okay, okay, that's gonna include everybody. And is there any kind of anything being sent out, suggestion to the parents to speak to their physicians about their children and themselves? Any kind of a flyer or anything being sent out to them?
Oh, I'm not sure specifically. I know that our nurses do a lot of work around the flu season and things like that. But, you know, even when you look at our COVID-19 resources, we continually recommend following the CDC guidelines, which Shirley will talk about the flu vaccine.
All right, thank you. Then I had one other
Go ahead.
question. And this, I don't know if this is, I'm just gonna make the comment. Pledge of Allegiance. I've been seeing some kids online watching all of this. Are they saying Pledge of Allegiance in school in the mornings?
This isn't on the agenda though, so.
Is that not on, okay, I
No.
don't know if that would go under.
That'd have to be,
That's for an information item.
yeah, you could ask for an
next
information
Okay,
item
let's-
for next
okay,
time.
I'll do that. On the transportation?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. There are some, the daycare vans are having some issues being put into the parent line pickup at different locations and everything. Do we have any kind of a policy about how we include the daycare vans in the pickup? Because being out of there by 3:15 seems to be a problem sometimes.
Yeah, Mr. Jones is coming down to address
Okay.
that one.
But I'm not sure that that's a bus one, because not all the campuses.
That wouldn't be under transportation?
No, that'd be under the school.
Yeah,
Each school
that's how we handle our dismissal.
So
And,
who would I talk to about that?
It's probably
each
more of
school
a,
does their own thing,
that's
so.
probably more of a private issue
So
for
that-
your school.
I would encourage, again, every campus is structured a little bit differently in how they're doing that. So I would highly encourage that the daycares that might be having these challenges, that they contact the school principal, and then the school principal can help troubleshoot that.
Okay. The reason I mentioned it, because it is an issue at some places, but I remembered some of the newer schools, we actually designated, said this is where the buses would be, this is where the van pickups and the special ed would be. I thought we had, but if we hadn't designated that.
Pre-COVID or currently in COVID?
In the new schools.
In each one, yes, there's going to be designated areas, and as Diane, there is designated areas, but their locations and the doors can be different in the different campuses.
Okay, so we
And
can
as a
go-
result of that, the campus principals have the flexibility to make the necessary adjustments. So again, I would highly encourage that they contact the campus principal if there's some issues, because I believe we can help problem solve that.
Yeah, okay.
I have one more question. real
Yes,
quick
ma'am, go ahead.
Today, no, for COVID. If a teacher does have to quarantine, not that they have COVID but have been exposed, and they're out for what, 2 weeks? Do they have to show anything or just answer the questions after the 2 weeks? Do they have to be tested at all before they come back?
No, they just have to go through the quarantine period and then answer the questions that they are not ill.
Okay.
Correct.
But we still have added now that if they've been tested, they have to wait till they get the results
Correct.
before.
Correct.
Okay. All right, just it came up today. Thank you. All right, that's it.
Okay, all right. It is 8:59 PM, and we are adjourning to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorneys. Do I hit this?
You can.
Good, okay.
Okay.
We are now back in open session. It is 9:19 PM. We have a quorum. Are there any motions to be made?
Madam Chairman, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the recommendation of Casey Lazar as Director of Career and Technology.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's see, what am I doing here? All in favor? All in favor, say aye. Any negative, any no's?
She's so
I am
tired.
so tired right now. Okay, we are good on that one then. Motion passes. Are there any future items? No future, you've had
I
a
have an
future item?
information item.
Okay, information item.
Information item. On one of the SMART goals, the superintendent, is a comprehensive review of the master plan principles by June of 2021. What I would like is a timeline. My goal is this, that we as a board with community input review the master plan principles that still have the date 2003 on them before we approve the architectural plans for any additional schools. Because I'm of the opinion we need to increase the size of some of our schools. And I don't want to necessarily wait till next June to have a review of that, and then we start planning when we can actually get the community involved and different architects and land purchasing and all that kind of stuff involved. I know it's a very complex process, so I'm kind of looking for a timeline. Are we going to wait till June, or are we going to be able to?
But the bond that, if it passes, is with the numbers of that master plan. So
Right.
the changing of the master plan would be for a future bond.
Well, it's time to get started, in my opinion.
Okay, for a 2023 bond. Okay.
Whichever one it would affect, I'm all for it.
For the 2023
And,
bond.
and at the end of the day, we might keep those principles exactly the same, except for changing the date on the top. I'm all about changing
Well-
that date every time it's reaffirmed, or I think.
I
that
think
date
it should be actually stated that, and I get to say this now because we're not, it's on the
No.
agenda. I'll say it at another time. What should be on there.
Did you get that?
So we
I
want a
got it.
timeline to review the master plan principles.
Yeah.
Any others? Okay, are there any upcoming meetings and events?
We have the TASA TASD virtual, what is that, October 1st?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are we gonna get information how to get on with that, or will that be coming to us?
They should have emailed you some information. If they have not, I'll check into it.
Seems like I got something.
I get constant emails from TASB, so.
Seems like I got something earlier this week, maybe.
I'll have to go back and look.
We'll follow up with each one of you that have,
I think I got
registered.
information, but it didn't really show, like when we had the leadership conference, how to actually
Check on and stuff.
get on and make sure that we were in the right sessions at the right time.
Karen will check for us.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Nope.
When's the first game?
Oh.
Oh.
24th?
Next Thursday, I think is the first one.
24th?
Oh, and next week's a walkthrough of the new.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Press
Press
box.
box at
On the
Trailer Station.
22nd,
Tues-
from 5 to 7.
Tuesday.
5 to 7.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Meeting is adjourned. It is 9:23 PM.